So welcome to part 3 of my Game Maker Studio demonstration. And if you haven't already seen part 1 and part 2, you can see them on YouTube under my live videos. Okay, so in this live demonstration, I'm going to be going through a few modifications I've made to the code for the player object. So the player object is the main character that we're controlling using the keyboard. We've also got the enemy object, which is a green alien, and we've given it basic AI for patrolling the ground and shooting. So what I found in the previous version was that the jumping wasn't very good. It was getting stuck to the ground objects. So what I've done is I've added a bit more code to make the jumping a bit more easier and actually more functional. So I've added these 3 lines here. So before we actually jump to a new position, we're going to check if that position is not colliding with the ground object. And we're using a function called place meeting. So what place meeting does, it places the instance of the object at the new positions, new X and new Y, and sees if there's a collision with the ground object. And we're only gonna move to the new X and the new Y if there is no collision. So these are the 3 lines that will improve the jumping. So what I can do is I can show you the difference. So I'm just going to comment out lines. And then I'm going to press play. So you can see the jumping works. However, if you jump there, it's going to get stuck in the walls. So to prevent that, we've added a new code. So I'm just going to put those lines back in. So we've got a check for place meeting, and we've got a move contact solid. So what this does, it's checking whether the object is colliding with ground object at new X and new Y. If we get a collision, then we're gonna just move up because it's still jumping. So we're gonna check for place meeting at X and new Y. If there's still an object there, then we're gonna move the player to the contact of the solid. So what this does, it moves the player object outside the solid object by a maximum of 20 pixels, but we can move this down to about 5. And this is the direction, and this is the amount. So let's try it now. So as you can see now, when you try and jump through the wall, it doesn't jump through the wall, so it's a bit more smoother action. And you can't actually jump through the top ledges Okay, the next thing is adding sounds. So every game needs sounds, and what you can do is you can download sounds off the internet. Just make sure that they're royalty free and you can use them. If you're going to be selling your game or using it for commercial purposes, you need to make sure you've got the right licenses for the sounds. And there's plenty of websites on the internet where you can find sounds. One of them is freesound.org. So what I've done is I've just downloaded these 3 sounds. Okay, so this is our sound here. So this is a sound for the jump action. So I've called it SND underscore jump. So you just want to name them so that they're easy to remember. Precede it with SND, so you know it's a sound. So this is SND jump. For each sound that you import, which can be an MP3 or an OGG or a WAV file, you can set the volume and also whether you want to compress it or not. And you can also set the number of channels. So you've got stereo output, 16-bit, sample rate and a bit rate. Now for most sounds, you can use 128 kbps, which is pretty standard. If you've got large samples or long samples, you can decrease the channels to mono, decrease the quality to 8-bit, and decrease the bit rate to something like 96. This will reduce the size of the samples. So I've got another sample for land. So when the player object lands, it just makes that sound there. And then the last one I've got is the SND underscore music. This is the background music. And I've just set the volume quite low. Set it to stereo 16-bit. So how do you get your music to play in the background? What I've done now is I've created a cont object. Now the cont object I've put in the room, in the ins objects layer. So this is sorry, I put in the top layer. So this is the cont object there. And I've made it persistent. So this means that this object will only be created once and it will pass through all the different rooms and it will maintain its variables. So the way to get your background music looping is you use the function audio play sound. You reference the ID of the music sound, which is SND underscore music. The second argument is priority. I usually just leave this as 0. And then the last argument, which is the most important one, is loops. So you set this to true. So this will now loop the background music. And there's loads of other functions, commands for audio files. If you just type in audio, you can see a list of all the different functions. So you can have a little read of the Game Maker Studio manual, and you can learn all these other functions. So the most kind of like common ones that you might use are to check whether a sound is playing. So you can use audio is playing with the sound ID to check whether a sound is playing. You could pause all sounds, resume them. You can also set the pitch of a sound. You can stop all sounds using audio stop all. And the other thing is volume. You can set the volume. Okay. So this is a content object. So in the create event, I've just put audio play sound SND music. Now if you go to our player object, we want to play the two sounds, which are the sound for jumping and the sound for landing. So when we press the W key, sorry, we press the W key, where is it? And it jumps. We put audio play sound SND jump here. And just make sure that the last argument is set to 0, which means it is a loop. Otherwise, you're going to get the jumping sound playing over and over again. So we've got audio play sound when it jumps. And then when it lands, which is here. So we've got a place meeting XY with a ground object. We've got audio play sound SND land 0, 0, so it's not looping. The other thing I've added is a move contact solid. So when the played object is not jumping, i.e. is falling down, we're going to be checking to see whether there's a collision with the ground object. And if we do get a collision, we'll then stop the jumping and we'll set grounding to 1. That means that it's landed. We'll also play the sound there. Move contact solid will then move the object, the player object, by 1 pixel upwards, which is 90 degrees. So the first argument in move contact solid is 90 degrees. So we'll move the player object up 1 pixel. Just going to copy this into the enemy AI code as well. So you've got the enemy object. It's got similar code in a step event. As you can see, we've already got that move contact solid 5. Sometimes you have to play around with these the arguments in move contact solid and place meeting in order to get the right collision, and you don't want the objects, you don't want the character objects getting stuck in the solid objects. So let's just try it now. So as you can see, we've got the jump sound and then the landing sound, and the jumping is a lot more smoother. It's a bit more difficult, but it's smoother. Oh. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to fix this game over splash dialog. So if you look at the previous live videos, you'll see that when we had a game over event, we just use a simple question dialog. We're using the built-in functions, but I found that was a bit kind of basic. So what I've done is I've created this game over splash, using paint program, and this will then get displayed when when the player object dies. But we want to display on top of everything. So as you can see, this one we've got some errors here because it's not being displayed over the actual game, the objects in the game. So this is the sprite, because we got a sprite which is 476 pixels wide, and it's a single frame. And if we wanted to, we could also animate it by duplicating the frame. So you can just copy and paste, double click on the actual image, and you can edit one frame at a time. So we could just give you a little blurring effect. Okay, so what I've done now is I've created a new object which is called the game over ob, and I've defined the sprite. So I've set the sprite as the game over sprite. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to set the speed of the image. So we use image speed and set the value to something like 0.1. So now when we have a game over event in the game, the player dies, we'll display this, we'll create a new instance of game over ob. In a create event, we're going to stop all the sounds using audio stop all. So this is stop the background music, set the image speed, and then we're also going to position make sure that we position it in the center of the screen. Now the way we do this is we use the camera get view X and camera get view Y. The reason for this is because in our rooms we're using viewports, so we don't see the whole room in the game window. We only see this small viewport, this rectangle. So that's all we're going to see. So our splash or anything that we want to display in the middle of the view has to use the camera X and Y. So what we're doing is we're positioning the X because the X and Y origin of game over is center, middle center. Okay, so we set the X position by getting the camera X, the X position of the camera, and then we're gonna add the width to it. So we're getting the width of the camera and we're dividing it by 2. And we do the same thing with the Y. We're getting the camera get view Y of the camera 0. And then we're adding the height of the camera divided by 2. So this code here will basically center the game over sprite on the game window within the viewport. And the next thing we did was we added a key press event. So to add a new key press event, click on add event, look for key pressed, and then you can select which key you want to add event for. So we can also add a space and then put the code in for what happens when the user presses spacebar. So when the user presses a spacebar and you've got an instance of game over ob in the room that's active, and you press spacebar or the enter key, you're gonna restart the game. Now we just need to fix up room 2. So the reason why we're getting the error with the game over splash not displaying correctly was we've got a new layer called inst top in room 1. So this is the order in which we see the layers. So the background layer is at the very back, so that's at the bottom. Then we've got the instant objects, and then we've got the instant solids. And to be honest, we want the solids to be under, but depends. So that's all the solids there. If you click on this little eye icon, you can just make them invisible, just hide them. And these are all the objects. So what you need to do is we need to go to room 2 and we need to create a new layer. Create new instance layer, click on it, and then we need to rename it as the same on inst top. Now there's a reason for this, which I'll just show you now. If we go to the player object, which is here, if we get a game over event, so if the player drops into a hole in the ground, we set the visible to 0, and then we set the alarm to 1 second divided by 2, so 500 milliseconds. After 500 milliseconds, alarm 1 executes, and in alarm 1 we've got instance create layer. So this is creating an instance of the game over op, as you can see here. So game over op. Now the reason we were having the error is because we never had a layer called inst top. So this is the first, second, third. It's the third argument. Now we don't really actually need to set the X and Y position here because we're already setting the X and Y position in the step event. So we could just put something like 0, 0 here. And it would still work because the X and Y position of the game over op will be set in its step event. So now this should work. So we can just test it to see if it works. So to go to room 2. So first of all, we can see what the animation works. So we just got a little blurring effect on the game over. And then we're going to press our space bar to restart. That works as well. And we just want to make sure our game over splash displays properly. Okay, so you can see it works now. So it's creating the game over ob on the topmost layer. So it's going to be displaying the sprite at the very top. Just press spacebar to restart it. Okay, so that works. So I've just shown how to add sounds, play sounds, stop sounds, how to use move contact solid, and also just fixed an issue with layers in rooms. Okay, so I'm going to leave it at that for this live demonstration. Maybe you could subscribe to my YouTube channel, that's Risbit, and also follow us on TikTok. I'll see you in part 4.